You are watching Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports, and I am your host, Stone Shields. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about Trey Hendrickson because there was a new report yesterday from Jeremy Fowler over at ESPN as far as what is going on between Trey Hendrickson and the Cincinnati Bengals, and it is a bit of a development in terms of what we've seen here with this Trey Hendrickson contract situation with Cincinnati. Going to be breaking that down here on today's show, what exactly Fowler had to say and kind of my thoughts around that as well. By the way, doing some solo producing here on today's show, so if you see me look down, whatever the case may be, just trying to do multiple things here at once as we progress throughout today's video. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that sub button if you haven't done so already at youtube.com/Bengals TV. As I've talked about here at the channel, our goal here in June of 2025 is to be able to reach our sub number from last year, June of 2024. We have a decent start here. Currently have 137 subs here this month. Still got a ways to go, and obviously we're at that halfway point of the month right now. Still need 264 subs. So help me out. Help yourself out as well. We'll be here all off season long. Plenty of training camp videos for you guys when that comes. Before we know it, it'll be preseason and the regular season as well. Trying to get to that 20K subscriber mark. Help us out. Hit that sub button for me right now. All right, so the update is pretty significant, but we don't necessarily have a ton of details here at this point. The update is this. Cincinnati and Trey Hendrickson have resumed contract talks. And I think, obviously, that is a positive situation when you're talking about the Bengals trying to work through this disagreement that they have with Trey Hendrickson. Again, overall, this is good news, right? Hendrickson, when he was kind of airing his grievances out there to the whole world when he showed up at OTAs just to talk with reporters, right? All the things that he was saying on the Pat McAfee show, the comments that he made, the statements that he made to Adam Schefter, kind of just saying, hey, the communication has been bad. The communication has not been existent necessarily between Cincinnati and his team. Now there is communication per Jeremy Fowler. Now I do wonder who budged here, right? Was it Cincinnati saying, all right, yeah, you know what, we'll come back, we'll talk. There's a number that you don't like that we offered you. We're willing to come back to the table. Or was it Trey Hendrickson saying, okay, you guys clearly aren't budging on your end. I need to come back and, maybe we can talk about, the $28 million that you offered. So I do think it is very interesting which side here, whether it be Cincinnati or Trey Hendrickson, is the one that said, you know what, we do need to come back together, make some changes in terms of, the last time we talked. So I think that is very interesting. But I did want to bring back this quote here from Duke Tobin. Of course, we at Chat Sports were at the NFL Scouting Combine a couple of months ago in Indianapolis. Duke Tobin really spent a long time talking with the media, and this is what he had to say in regards to Trey Hendrickson, saying this: I want Trey on our football team. He's under contract. We're looking to pay him for what we believe will really be good future years, and we see him as not falling off in his career. And, we're actively trying to pay him. And I do believe Duke Tobin when he says this. Let me be very transparent, right? I think a lot of people kind of have attacked Duke Tobin in the past, saying things that necessarily don't come true. But considering what came true with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and, of course, Joe Burrow, I think you have to look at him and kind of take his word for it, right? Now you scratch your head. You wonder why in the world has it taken so long, and it's still taking long as there is no deal right now. But I do believe it is the Bengals' top priority at this point to figure something out with Trey Hendrickson. It's just the value in which that contract sits, obviously not wanting to pay him that $40 million mark that Myles Garrett's getting up in Cleveland, and also probably can't get the $35 million per year mark as well. But I do believe Cincinnati wants to keep Trey Hendrickson, and by the way, that's not a new development, right? That's something we've said ever since the 2024 season wrapped up. That's what Cincinnati wants to do, but obviously finding that balance between what they want and what Hendrickson wants is the biggest issue here at this point. Pin comment time here on today's show. Will Trey Hendrickson participate in training camp? That's kind of the next big thing, right? Obviously, Hendrickson has been subject to over $100,000 in fines because he was not at mandatory minicamp, obviously the 3-day session last week. Next big thing here is training camp. Do you think he will be there? Let me know. Type Y for yes or N for no. Really interesting, as we've talked about here at length on this show, trying to figure out what exactly Trey Hendrickson's value is, right? Because it's a guy that is leading the NFL in sacks. He's the sack king and has had 17 and a half these past 2 seasons. And obviously, last year that led the NFL, but he's up there in age, right? But so is Myles Garrett. The Bengals are obviously paying more guys than Cleveland's paying, so they're really trying to jump through a lot of hoops here when you're talking about Trey Hendrickson. And I'm wondering if he's sitting there saying, like, he didn't like that $100,000 fine that he just had to eat. If he's sitting there talking with his family, talking with his wife, saying, you know what, we just got to, get back in the room with this organization. And obviously they hadn't been in the room in quite some time, but now these talks are picking up. And what exactly is that contract going to look like? I think that becomes kind of the next big question that we are looking at here now that we have confirmation. Okay, they're trying to get this done. They're communicating again. Well, what exactly is it going to look like? We've showed this to you guys a bunch of times here as far as the top edge rushers in the market and what they're getting. As I previously alluded to, the top two there are really what's causing issues here. Myles Garrett. Is Myles Garrett a better player than Trey Hendrickson? Yeah, I don't have a problem admitting that. I don't think you guys should have a problem admitting that as well. But he also is no spring chicken, and he's getting $40 million. And then Danielle Hunter, as we've talked about, really is the issue as to why this thing hasn't gotten done, right? Danielle Hunter's a great player. I'm not attacking him as a football player. He's not as good as Trey Hendrickson, and he's getting 35.6 from Houston this coming season. Now, James Rapien, who, of course, does a phenomenal job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for Cincinnati Bengals Sports Illustrated, Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube, he had a suggestion, and he says 2 years, $76 million extension for Trey Hendrickson with a really sizable signing bonus. Now, that makes sense to me, but it clearly doesn't make sense to Trey Hendrickson because what's been reported was that they were offering that $28 million per year mark. Obviously, that is what 2 years, $76 million equates to. But, and I think the biggest thing for me is not the money, but the fact that he's going to be looking for more than a 2-year extension, right? That would mean there are a total of 3 years on his deal, and I think he's looking for more than that. He wants more long-term security because that kind of has been the issue here with Trey Hendrickson. He's tired of signing these short deals. Again, I don't know why he signed the 1-year extension if he was just going to put himself back in the situation and get ticked off about it, but I digress. I don't think 2 years really is going to be what Hendrickson is looking for. I think he's looking for more of a 3-year extension, and ultimately we'll see if Cincinnati gets that worked out. But overall, positive news that the two sides are back here in the building communicating with one another. Now, if we would have gotten this report a couple of days before training camp, that would be a problem. There's still plenty of time here to get things worked out before training camp. We'll continue with our show here in a second, but do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that these Bengals Crucial Catch hoodies are on sale right now. You can go get them on clearance, right? I believe they're $20 off at least over on Fanatics. And obviously, Crucial Catch is the NFL's way of fighting back against cancer. It really is a phenomenal cause, and it's a pretty awesome sweatshirt as well. One more time, that's chatsports.com/Bengals hoodie /. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description of today's show. All right, wanted to talk about Shemar Stewart here for the second half of today's video. And this is what James Rapien had to write about Shemar Stewart. Again, I think people across the national media and really the fan base are kind of getting this situation messed up as far as who is to blame here between the Bengals and Shemar Stewart. This is what Rapien wrote, saying this: plenty of teams use the language with their first-round picks. Obviously, the language is what's kind of holding up as far as the default language, right, as to why Shemar Stewart has not signed his contract. There are also plenty of stars that have the language in their respective contracts, including Saquon Barkley. That doesn't mean Stewart is wrong for pushing back on things, but Mike Brown isn't a Mr. Burns-level villain for wanting it in the contract. One thing that could help the Bengals cause with Stewart would be to insert that default language into a possible Trey Hendrickson contract extension. Now, we have been trying to say here at length that this isn't the Bengals' fault, right? The Bengals are not innocent here, right? The Bengals totally deserve some blame in this situation. But if you had to pick between the two sides, I'm on Cincinnati's side here over Shemar Stewart. As Rapien pointed out, this isn't some new thing. The Bengals aren't trying to do anything crazy here, right? All they are trying to do is kind of protect themselves a little bit if in the case that Shemar Stewart messes up, gets suspended, what have you, the team is not, stuck and tied down with that guaranteed money. They can kind of get out of it a little bit if they put this language into the deal. And really, my biggest takeaway here is that so many teams do this. This isn't some unprecedented thing. Now, is it unprecedented for Cincinnati? Sure. But teams across the league? No, not at all. And again, I think Shemar Stewart just either needs to sign the injury waiver, get out there as they work through this, or just sign the contract. Be happy that he was a first-round pick here and go out and play football. This is absolutely ridiculous that there's this amount of drama before he has even played a singular down of football for this organization. When do you think Shemar Stewart will begin practicing? Sound off for us in the comment section of today's show. Let me know. Obviously, there's been some trade talk about Shemar Stewart, which is just absolutely outlandish, something that we talked about in one of our at-home videos, right? Look, because of the collective bargaining agreement, there is a clause in there that essentially says, yeah, he has the right to sit out the entirety of the year, not get paid, and then have an opportunity to get redrafted next year. Is that going to happen? I would be shocked. That would be absolutely ridiculous if that did happen with Shemar Stewart here. And again, I would be shocked. I consider it literally a 0% chance of happening. But again, worth pointing out. But regardless, let me know when you think he's going to start practicing with the football team. Now, the Hendrickson element to the equation is very interesting, right? Is Cincinnati going to put that into Hendrickson's contract? And would Hendrickson be fine with that in his deal, right? Now, Hendrickson's a guy, there's no off-the-field issues with him, right? No trouble with the law, right? Of note, as we've talked about, these voids has nothing to do with injuries on the football field. It's all other stuff off the football field that the Bengals would be protecting themselves with. I think Trey Hendrickson wouldn't have an issue with that kind of language in his contract. Clearly, Saquon Barkley doesn't have an issue with that kind of language in his contract as well. And it is also worth pointing out that, the reason why you kind of have to discuss this here with the Cincinnati Bengals, in years prior, it's kind of been unprecedented for them to guarantee money beyond the first year of a contract. Obviously, they broke that trend with Burrow, Higgins, and Chase. Probably will break it again with Hendrickson. So then you begin to wonder, hey, you need to put that language in there because obviously if there's no guarantees beyond the first year, there's really no reason to put that kind of language in a contract. Now, James Rapien also mentioned perhaps some signing bonus changes that could perhaps get it so where Shemar Stewart can get this thing signed away and over with. I don't think it's going to happen unless the Bengals take off the language or he just decides, shoot, it's time I got to sign this thing. Rapien suggested that, hey, maybe you give him all of his signing bonus right away, or perhaps 75% of it right away. Obviously, Amarius Mims, last year, he got, I believe, 50%. Then a couple months later, he got the second 50%, right? Again, it has no impact on how much money. It's just the timing of when the money comes in. Is that going to ultimately change Shemar Stewart's stance? I don't think so. But, it is worth pointing out, and we'll see. Obviously, the Bengals, at this point, should be trying to do whatever they can to get him on the football field. Doesn't appear that is a priority, which I'm okay with if they get something done with Hendrickson before camp. If you go into camp without either one of those guys, it's a big, big issue. Make sure you guys give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. All of our Bengals breakdown content will be posted to my Twitter page. Send me out. Give me a follow over on Twitter.